Hey guys, tonight we drift into a world of stone huts, misty coasts, and men in itchy woolen robes who genuinely earnestly tried to count every raindrop that ever fell from the Irish sky. You're waking up now barely. There's a steady drip 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 echoing around your tiny cold stone cell. The roof above you is thatched but not entirely effective. One determined drop manages to find the gap between two reeds and splashes straight onto your forehead. You blink, groan softly, and shuffle upright beneath your rough woolen blanket. The walls are damp. Your robe smells like sheep. Outside, wind keens around the narrow arches of the monastery, rattling shutters and whistling past moss-covered statues of saints you've never heard of. Welcome to Skellig Michael, an ancient rock rising from the Atlantic like a sleeping sea monster's spine, home to a dozen medieval Irish monks. And for reasons unclear it's the 9th century. Everything here is made of rock wool or bark. It's raining for the 4th day in a row. The monastery doesn't have central heating, but it does have a rather confusing project underway. The monks here are not just praying, they're also counting raindrops. All of them, one at a time. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love reading those. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle toward the door. Your sandals are basically just wet felt. A monk passes by in silence, holding a notched stick and muttering in Old Irish. His lips move with slow reverence. Aon, do, tree, 1, 2, 3. You're not sure whether he's praying, counting his regrets, or logging the drops rolling down his sleeve. Outside, the fog blurs everything into grays and greens. It's the kind of mist that tastes like iron and sheep, and it clings to your eyelashes. A bell rings somewhere up the slope, though it's not so much a chime as a dull, wet clang. You follow the trail, a dirt path the color of bog water, up toward the chapel. This place wasn't built for comfort. It was built for eternity. Skellig Michael's beehive huts squat like stone mushrooms, wind-scoured and rain-polished. And the monks here? They believe rain is sacred. Every drop a message from God. Every drizzle a chance to understand the divine. Of course, they also think cats are tiny demons, and sneezes are messages from the other world, so maybe grain of salt. As you step into the chapel, if you can call it that, it's basically a roofless oval of rocks. You're met by the abbot. His eyebrows are thick enough to comb. He holds out a dripping wooden bowl and says gravely, "We begin again." Begin what? You look down into the bowl. It's half full of rainwater. You've just volunteered to help measure rainfall. The abbot explains in a voice like wet parchment. They're trying to count how many raindrops fall per storm, per week, per year. To divine patterns, maybe even divine purpose. It's part astronomy, part theology, part poorly conceived hobby. Historians still argue whether this was a form of early scientific observation or just a particularly soggy form of penance. Either way, they kept doing it. You spend the morning following a young monk named Tadg. He has freckles, a permanent frown, and what appears to be a frog in his satchel. Tadg shows you how they catch rain using a series of carved wooden bowls positioned at different altitudes around the island. To see if the Lord favors the high places or the low, he explains. You ask if they ever just guessed. He frowns harder and says, "Only when it hails." One quirky tidbit: they used to say that if a drop hit your nose 3 times before breakfast, it meant you were destined to become abbot. You check your nose and wonder if anyone told Tadg. By mid-afternoon, you're soaked down to your kneecaps and wondering why no one ever thought to invent gutters. The answer: they didn't want to interrupt the descent of grace. You trudge to the scriptorium. The door creaks open, revealing damp scrolls rolled in birch bark and lashed with goat sinew. A few monks hunched over them try to blot ink with their sleeves. One is using a duck feather as a stylus and muttering, 28, 29. Blast it, I lost count. They're recording rainfall manually. Not volumes drops. Individual ones. Each monk takes shifts during the rainiest months. It's not a precise system, but it is a persistent one. You try your hand at it. You stand beneath a leaky beam with a small dish and try to log each drop as it falls. After 10 minutes, you're up to 17. Then the wind shifts your dish tips, and it's back to 0. Brother Owen just sighs and hands you a dry one. Again he says, like, this is all very normal. And somehow it is. You wipe your face with your sleeve, which somehow makes things wetter, not drier. Brother Owen, who's got the permanent expression of someone disappointed in the weather, leads you up a slippery path that winds toward the upper terraces. This way, he says, where the sky speaks more clearly. The monks here genuinely believe that the higher you go, the purer the rainfall. Something about being closer to heaven. Never mind that the wind up here is violent enough to yeet your hood into the Atlantic. You pass by rows of carefully balanced stone bowls, perched on mossy ledges, each with a carved line to measure the depth of water. Beside each bowl, a small slate tablet with a smudge of chalk. The idea, Ogun explains, is to record the height of water between prayers, then estimate how many drops it took to reach that level. You glance at the slate. Someone has written approx. 200 drops, partial drizzle. May God clarify. It's hard to tell what's more absurd, trying to calculate divine precipitation, or the fact that these monks seem to be improving at it. They've developed methods, rituals, tools, and a kind of language. The rain is not just heavy or light, it is soul-thick, grain-misted, or joy-weeping. One entry even says moody, with hints of fish. You don't ask. Ogun pauses to adjust a bowl that's been nudged sideways by a puffin. The rain speaks, he says, dead serious. We just struggle to hear it clearly. You climb higher still, the path narrowing until you're clutching tufts of heather to avoid tumbling into the sea. And then you see at the main weather station. It's less impressive than it sounds. Just a flat clearing with a waist-high rock circle in the middle of which stands a wooden pole tied with strips of wool that sway and drip, depending on the wind's mood. Around the pole sit 4 monks, cross-legged, eyes closed. One hums. Another ticks a bone-carved tally stick. Another seems to be meditating on a slug. You join them quietly. The air here tastes like salt and ancient wood smoke. And rain, always rain, touching your cheeks like 1,000 tiny sighs. The monks believe that observing rain is a form of devotion. That the number of drops in a storm correlates to the sins of a village. That sometimes if you listen closely enough you can hear the pattern in the fall. Historians still argue whether this was mystical nonsense or a rudimentary meteorological experiment gone monastic. Some think these monks were the forerunners of rainfall science. Others think they were just very, very bored. One thing's certain, they wrote a lot of it down. Back in the library, brittle scrolls and soaked manuscripts preserve years of rainfall records. 244 drops at dawn, felt oddly judgmental. Or 100 plus drops after Brother Todd sneezed during matins. Omen unclear. And yes, they really tried to count. Not estimate. Count. Drop by drop. They developed a routine. Every prayer hour, the rainfall collector would log the amount, then relay the number to the appointed scribe. If more than one drop landed at once, they'd split the average. Which brings you to your current task timing. You sit now beside Brother Cormac, a thin, twitchy monk with a shaved head and a suspiciously dry habit. He's perfected what he calls the chalice method. He shows you the device, a bronze communion cup polished to a dull gleam, set carefully beneath a small hole in the thatch. He believes that the sound of a raindrop hitting the cup can be used to calibrate rainfall rhythm. A kind of divine metronome. You must listen, he says, tilting his head. Not just hear. Listen. You do. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoes off the stone walls, rhythmic as a heartbeat. Cormac records the interval with a charcoal stick on a scrap of parchment pinned to his sleeve. 5 drops per breath, he mutters. A blessed pace. Then suddenly the drip becomes a dribble. You look up. The hole's widened. The cup fills too quickly. Chaos. Plug it with something, Cormac cries. You grab a nearby clump of moss, squish it into the thatch, and restore the sanctity of the chalice. Cormac nods gravely. God thanks you. You try not to laugh. Later, over a watery stew that mostly tastes like boiled moss and contrition, the monks discuss the deeper meaning. What if each drop is a thought from heaven, one muses? Another wonders whether counting them adds up to a kind of holy arithmetic. Brother Tadag chimes in. What if rain is God's way of writing, only we don't know the alphabet? You sip your stew and glance out the window. Still raining. Obviously. Then the abbot speaks. His voice cuts through the clatter of wooden spoons. We count not for certainty, but for reverence. To humble ourselves before the infinite. And also, he adds after a pause, because Brother Raindrop won't let us stop. Everyone turns to Raindrop, who smiles sheepishly and goes back to scribbling in his rain journal. By candlelight you read a few entries. Some are full of precise math. Others are rambling reflections about cloud shapes and how rain feels different when you're sad. One page is just drawings of increasingly grumpy puddles. You're starting to like it here. A final quirky detail for tonight. One monk, according to legend, once claimed he saw a raindrop fall sideways, hover, then shoot back into the clouds. When pressed, he admitted he might have been fasting too long. The drawing of the event shows a rather smug-looking raindrop with wings. Historians still debate whether he was being poetic or just delirious. You curl up on a pallet in the corner of the chapel, lulled by the rhythmic patter above and the gentle snores of monks nearby. A puffin waddles past your head, looking unimpressed. You whisper to yourself, drip 1, drip 2. Sleep doesn't come quickly, but it comes. The next morning the bell tolls again. It's not so much a chime as a groan, like a rusted cowbell dropped down a well. You peel yourself off your straw pallet joints, stiff from sleeping at a 15-degree incline. The rain hasn't stopped. Of course it hasn't. It never really does here. Brother Fiontan greets you with his usual enthusiasm, which is to say he grunts and gestures at your feet. You've forgotten your sandals again. Not that they help. They're soaked within 3 steps. Breakfast is gruel and boiled leeks. You're beginning to suspect leeks are the only vegetable permitted by the rule. Across the table, Brother Ogun is tapping the side of a wooden cup with the intensity of a man decoding secrets from God. You lean over. What are you doing? Counting, he mutters. By weight this time. You blink. Weight of what? Raindrops. Of course. It turns out today's project is a test of an idea proposed by one of the monastery's more creative minds, a friar named Aodan the Calculative. His theory: that the weight of water collected during certain prayer intervals could be converted into an estimated raindrop count, assuming a drop weighs roughly 1 minuscule fraction of a sheepskin scrap unit, or screwdog, a measurement invented solely for this purpose. You follow the monks into the refectory which they've cleared for this experiment. They have a scale. It's rudimentary, a long birch branch balanced on a stone with small rocks on one side and a cup of rain on the other. The math is frankly optimistic. Brother Raindrop records numbers on a wax tablet. Current guess 14 to 300 drops between matins and terce, he announces. Margin of error about 14,000. Historians still argue whether this method represented an innovative approach to rainfall quantification, or was just an elaborate way to pass time until the next lentil soup. One fringe tidbit: one monk once insisted on measuring rain using only his tongue. He claimed he could estimate droplet size by surface impact. No one stopped him. His journal contains entries like 3:15 p.m. Slightly salty, perhaps heretical. The abbot eventually banned the practice when another novice developed a head cold trying to recreate it. You move on to the next task, testing the consistency of rainfall across containers. This involves placing identical wooden bowls at different locations beneath the eaves, atop the well wall, under the goat's shelter, and measuring how full they are after the same time period. You'd think this would be straightforward. It isn't. The goat is uncooperative. The well is windy, and the bowl under the eaves seems to be collecting more than just rain, possibly divine punishment in the form of bird droppings. Still, the monks persist. They chart. They compare. They debate. Do we count what evaporates before we measure it? One asks. What about rain absorbed into moss? Do we include splashback? You get the sense this could go on forever. And it has. Some of the scrolls date back nearly 2 generations. Stacked in a dry corner of the cellar, miraculously dry, are bundled parchments bound with gut string labeled Rainfall Year 1, Year 2, and ominously Year. That last one is in Brother Raindrop's handwriting. When you ask about it, he shrugs. The year of the great fog. Time was complicated. You're sent to the scriptorium after lunch, where Brother Nauiz is carefully inking rainfall entries using a feather quill trimmed so finely it could slice wind. You watch as he writes at noon. Cloud laughter yielded gentle showers. 7. 801 drops logged. Felt meaningful. It's oddly poetic. You ask if they were trained in this. Not poetry, he says, but the rain teaches rhythm. And it's true. There is something musical about it all. The fall, the splash, the drip, the whisper of runoff down the gutterless stone. You find yourself listening to it like a lullaby. Back in the main hall, the abbot holds a brief sermon under the leaking roof. The sky offers us more than water, he says, pausing as a drip lands squarely in his palm. It offers us the illusion of order. We try to grasp it, and in the grasping, we learn humility. A drop lands on your nose. Maybe you're destined to be abbot after all. Later, you're invited to the experiment chamber, which is just a tool shed lined with rain-stained ledgers. There, Brother Cuthbert is testing out what he calls the chain of grace, a crude contraption made of linked wooden spoons designed to capture falling drops and pass them down into a waiting jug. It's not working. Water splashes everywhere. But he's convinced that once the angles are adjusted just right, the flow will match the psalm's cadence. We may yet divine the sacred number, he says with such conviction that you almost believe it too. A quirky fact from the ledgers: one record notes a day in which no rain fell for the entire morning. The entry is underlined and followed by a drawing of a confused monk looking skyward. The margin note reads, "We sang anyway." You spend the rest of the evening cataloging drops by sound, differentiating between the plink on copper, the plop in a puddle, and the muffled thop of a droplet hitting wool. The monks have names for these sounds, Brathshanach and Colum respectively. It's not clear if these are official terms or just something Raindrop made up for fun. Historians still debate whether this sonic taxonomy had predictive value or was just a peculiar obsession passed down like a family joke. You fall asleep once more to the sound of rain on stone and the faint scratching of Brother Nauiz's quill. He's still logging drops, still trying to number the unnumberable. And you're beginning to see the appeal. You wake to a new sound, not rain for once, but the creak of a wooden pail being dragged across the floor. It's Brother Fiontan again, and he's looking unusually grim. It's a scroll emergency, he says, already heading for the scriptorium. You groan, roll off your straw mattress, and stumble after him, feet cold against the flagstones. Outside, the skies are still gray but not weeping. For the moment, there's a hush, the kind of quiet that makes you suspicious. In the scriptorium, chaos reigns quietly because these are monks. But you can feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. A scroll has gone missing. Not just any scroll, but the foundational ledger of the first rain count, dated allegedly to the monastery's founding. Raindrop is pacing in circles. I saw it only 2 days ago. Right next to the ink pot with the spider nest. Brother Cuthbert lifts a stack of damp parchment. Are you sure it didn't rehydrate? That's apparently a thing here. Old scrolls taking on so much water they just blur into pulp. You start helping, leafing carefully through bundles wrapped in lambskin. And there it is, not missing, just swollen into a soggy crescent stuck between records of storm bursts and heaven-damp events. The relief in the room is palpable. Saved by the goat wax seal, someone whispers. Apparently that's a preservation technique. Goat wax on scroll edges. Smells terrible. Works reasonably well. Probably don't try it at home. Historians still argue whether this method actually helped preserve Irish monastic records, or just led to a lot of slightly waxy saints' biographies. The scroll itself is barely legible now, but one line stands out. A storm begins not with clouds, but with silence. You wonder if they were trying to be poetic, or if the monk in question had simply forgotten what clouds were. After breakfast boiled barley, and something that may have once been an onion, you find yourself on rainbow duty again. The rain has returned, drizzling in fits and starts. Not enough for a downpour, not quite mist. Brother Tadg calls it blessing rain. Brother Ruaidri calls it confusing. Today's task is refining the monks' rain-gathering system. Over the years, they've tried all sorts of tools, clay pots, wine gourds, even scooped out turnips abandoned for excess flavor. But the prize experiment is what they call the tree chupan, a 3-cup system designed to collect rain at 3 elevations: foot level, waist height, and head height. The idea is to determine if divine favor falls equally or prefers the humble. You help set up the wooden frames while trying to avoid slipping on the moss-covered flagstones. The monks measure carefully, marking times with sand glasses and clapping slowly in rhythm to count seconds. Then, the debates begin. Should we include splash droplets, Brother Ogan asks. What if the wind angles the fall? Is that gravity or divine redirection? Ruaidri counters. Do bugs invalidate the measure, mutters someone from under a hood. You start to wonder whether counting raindrops is less about precision and more about patience, or perhaps penance. But something about it has an odd serenity, a comfort in repetition, in believing you can understand something infinite through the narrow lens of the now. One fringe tidbit: the monks once tried catching individual raindrops on sheets of vellum coated in soot to leave a mark where each one landed. The results mostly smudges, plus one rather elegant spiral that they briefly considered framing. The day wears on, and you're assigned a new, slightly more complex duty: scribing the results into the mist codex. This thick, leather-bound tome is surprisingly well preserved. Brother Nauwies shows you how to abbreviate terms for drizzle drucht, steady rain kiobran, and surprise rain rune uise, which happens when a clear sky dumps water for no reason. There's also a section for emotional interpretation of each rain. You fill in 2040 drops between terce and sext. Mood slightly judgmental, but otherwise warm. Brother Cormac peers over your shoulder. Good. We don't want another passive-aggressive downpour. At Vespers, the monks chant beneath dripping arches. Their voices rise with the wind, weaving through stone columns that funnel sound like an ancient amphitheater. The rain has picked up again, steady now like a metronome for prayer. You watch the drops streak down the stained glass window behind the altar. No images, just panes of sea green and amber. The abbot once claimed they represented the moods of rain. Others say they were simply cheap trade glass. Either way, the light passing through casts the chapel in a soft aquatic hue. Everyone looks like they're underwater. Historians still debate whether the monks intended this effect, or if it was a happy accident, like discovering you can dry moss by stacking it under a goat's blanket, which they also did. As night falls, you huddle beside the central hearth, warmed slightly by peat smoke and slightly more by the monk beside you, who has dozed off mid-scroll. You listen to the roof. Each drop that lands overhead feels like punctuation. Like some ancient script is still being written above you, one dot at a time. You drift off with a line echoing in your mind. We count because the counting never ends. This morning the sky is not gray. It's white. Ominously white. The kind of white that suggests something's brewing. And sure enough, the moment you step out of the chapel, the wind slaps you across the face like a wet fish. The clouds gather in that slow, ominous way clouds do when they're plotting something spectacular. The monks are unusually energetic. Rain is one thing, they know how to handle rain. But today feels different. Today smells like hail. You find Brother Fiontan stringing up sheep ladder sheets across the cloister walkway. To measure hail velocity, he explains. You ask if it works. No, he replies, but it sounds spectacular. Inside the scriptorium, the mood is tense. Scrolls are being moved. Wax tablets packed away. Goat wax seals checked and double-checked. The abbot is already reviewing their hail procedures, flipping through a parchment titled, Concerning Ice Stones from Heaven and Their Appropriate Reverence. It contains precise measurements, shapes to sketch, and prayers to recite depending on size. Hail the size of a pea gets a simple blessing. Walnut-sized. That gets a chant and a fast. Anything larger. Ring the bell, confess something, and go inside. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine weather responses or just a coping mechanism for not having roofs. The storm hits just after terse. First a drizzle, then bam. You're pelted by cold, stinging bits of sky. The monks scatter with the urgency of men who've lived through this before. A few yell out drop counts as they run. You dash into the refectory, ducking beneath the lintel just as a chunk of hail the size of a quail's egg explodes against the door. And just like that, the records are in jeopardy. You follow the abbot down into the lower library, more of a glorified cave where their rainfall scrolls are kept dry in stone niches. But one corner's already leaking. Water dribbles down the wall, soaking into the margins of the great drizzle of 789. Brother Raindrop lets out an audible whimper. You're handed a stack of blotting cloths made from dried moss and sheep hair. Everyone begins the delicate process of drying the scrolls, laying them open, dabbing gently, whispering calming prayers as though to comfort them. Somehow, it works. Most pages survive. A few do not. There is a short service held for the ruined entries, which mostly contain descriptions like 17402 drops slightly moody, with a westerly hiss. Still, their loss is felt. Later that evening, once the storm subsides, you help inspect the outdoor rain bowls. Most have been overturned. One has a frog in it. Another is full of hail pellets, which Brother Tadig insists must be counted in reverse to honor their return to the heavens. You start tallying. 1, 2, 3. But the pellets are melting quickly and your fingers are freezing. Cormac joins you with his usual solemn air and a large spoon. Don't forget to consider terminal velocity, he says, scooping a hailstone into his palm. They arrive fast but leave slowly. He might be talking about weather. He might be talking about monks. You're no longer sure. By twilight, the conversation shifts how to classify hail. Is it just rain with ambition? Ice with aspirations? A failed snowflake? The monks argue over whether it belongs in the Book of Rain or should get its own section, Sky Stone's brief guests, from the celestial pantry. One even proposes a new unit of measurement hail print, defined as the diameter of the bruise left on Brother Owen's forehead. This is mostly a joke. Mostly. One quirky fact they love to retell during a particularly harsh storm years ago. Hailstones struck a bronze bell so precisely that it played a C major scale. The monks took it as a sign to switch their chant modes for the week. No one has ever replicated the phenomenon, but the bell still hangs in the hallway, just in case the heavens want to compose again. That night, the abbot calls everyone together. By candlelight, he reads a reflection written after a long-ago hailstorm. We believe we are counting the sky, but the sky is counting us. Every drop a question. Every stone a punctuation mark. And still we number on. You lie down wrapped in wool, brain fuzzy from counting and cold. Outside, the last of the hail melts into rivulets. The wind hums low through stone corridors. And above, the clouds regroup. You whisper mostly to yourself, 1, 2, 3. And sleep takes you mid-count. The next day you're awakened not by bells or rain but by silence. A rare and unsettling thing in this monastery. No dripping, no wind, no chanting. Just the low, confused mutter of monks shuffling around, unsure what to do with themselves. You sit up. Your robe is dry. That never happens. You peer outside and blink. Clear sky. Blue. Terrifying. Brother Fiontan sits near the door frowning at the clouds, or the lack of them. Something's wrong, he says. He's not alone in that view. The entire monastery is thrown off by the sudden absence of water from the sky. Everyone's pacing. The rainbows are empty. The drip logs blank. One monk has already sketched a worried-looking sun in the margin of his scroll, and added the note possible omen. Consult goats. You walk with Brother Ruedri along the ridge path where the wind normally whips your hood sideways and fills your nose with sea spray. Today it's calm. Too calm. You pass the raincups. Each sits dry, their bottoms dusty. You feel as though you've stumbled into a version of the world with the music turned off. Ruedri shakes his head. This happened once before. The year of the silent sky. You raise your eyebrows. They thought we were being punished, he explains. Or blessed. It depends who you ask. Brother Nauiz just took a nap and called it grace. He sighs. Historians still argue whether this dry spell was simply weather or a cultural reset born of overhydration and poor sleep. You glance at him. How long did it last? 3 days. You try to imagine 3 days without rain in this place. It feels like asking a fish to take a vacation on land. The monks convene in the chapel. The abbot stands before the altar, a faint sunbeam cutting through the east-facing arch behind him. Today, he says solemnly, we do not count. We wait. He doesn't say pray. He says wait, which somehow feels harder. Waiting without measuring, sitting still without tallying. A challenge for monks whose entire spiritual rhythm has been built around the fall of droplets. They try to keep busy. Brother Ogun begins to clean old raincups. Tadg sharpens quills. Ruedri updates their glossary of rainfall terms, adding 2 new entries, rain pause and sky fasting. You end up helping in the garden, if you can call a square of dirt and thyme bushes a garden. The soil is damp from weeks of prior storms, but drying quickly under the sun. A few monks fuss over this. The cabbage will panic, one says. To record this celestial drought, the monks decide to log it in reverse. Instead of counting what falls, they count the seconds nothing falls. You are now on silence duty. Every 5 minutes a bell is rung. A tally is made. One monk insists on tapping a stick against a rock for every dry minute. The stick eventually breaks. In the refectory, the absence of rain is all anyone can talk about. Brother Cormac suggests perhaps God is catching up on other weather elsewhere. Fiontan wonders aloud whether the clouds are planning something. We've only ever known them to fall, he says, chewing a dried apple. But what if they rise? You're not entirely sure what he means, but it sounds profound. One quirky monastic theory proposes that rain is like language, and just like people sometimes pause when speaking, the sky must also rest between sentences. Brother Nauiz records this idea under liturgical meteorology Volender next to a drawing of a cloud napping on a book. Meanwhile, the lack of rainfall creates a logistical problem. The monastery's cistern, normally refilled daily, now sits lower than expected. The monks begin rationing. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. You're assigned to track sips per monk. It's exactly as dull as it sounds. One evening, a novice breaks protocol and attempts to summon the rain. He stands on a ledge and chants psalms backward. Nothing happens, of course, except a gull steals his bread mid-chant. Ruedri writes in the journal, Day 2. The sky remains mute. We count silence now. It feels heavier than the rain ever did. At night, you lie awake missing the sound of dripping. The roof above you is heartbreakingly dry. It creaks instead of splashes. No lullaby of rainfall to count sheep by. Just air and quiet, and the distant shuffle of someone adjusting their blanket. By dawn, still no change. But in the chapel, there's a shift. The abbot, still and serene, begins to hum. Not a chant, not a hymn. Just a low, steady hum. A tone of waiting. The others join in one by one. You find yourself humming too. It's not counting. It's not measuring. But it's something. The sky breaks around midday, not in a grand apocalyptic crash of thunder, but in a single drop. You're standing by the rain bowls, lost in thought when it lands on your knuckle with a soft plip. You blink, not sure you felt anything at all. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the air shifts. That ancient skellig wetness returns like an old friend kicking down the door. The monks emerge like cautious crabs from their stone dwellings, heads tilted skyward, faces open. No one speaks. Not at first. The moment is too delicate. The first real rain in nearly 3 days. Then Brother Tadig shouts, "It's back," and the whole mood collapses into jubilant chaos. Bowls are retrieved, scrolls prepared, feathers sharpened. Everyone's suddenly in motion like bees after a thunderclap. You're handed a ledger, a damp rag, and told to log every drop you feel spiritually connected to. It's not a joke. Probably. Historians still argue whether this moment, the return of the rain, was viewed more as a meteorological event or a mini-spiritual revival. Ruedri's scroll about it is titled, "The Return of the Soft Glory." The monks treat the downpour with reverence, of course, but also with excitement bordering on giddiness. Brother Cormac twirls in slow circles holding his copper chalice aloft. Brother Ogun chants the rainfall psalms twice as loud as usual. Even the abbot cracks a smile, an event as rare as thunder snow. You return to the rain log, and for the first time you're not guessing. The drops fall thick and steady, and your cup fills visibly. You write 4,600 drops renewal, scented with peat and quiet joy. A new measuring experiment begins, velocity tracking by splash radius. You're assigned to observe raindrop impacts on various surfaces, slate, moss, your own forearm, and to sketch the resulting splash patterns. Ruedri swears there's a correlation between splash symmetry and inner peace. It's not science. It's not quite art. It's monastic meteorology. The abbey's central walkway becomes an impromptu raindrop orchestra. The monks position bowls, stones, and hollowed shells in a circle, listening to how each vessel sings in response to the falling water. Every drop has a note, Nawis says, eyes half closed. We are simply the choir. You try not to laugh, but it's beautiful in its way. The rain is steady all afternoon. Not too hard. Not a storm. Just kind. The sort of rain that coats rather than soaks, that hushes birds and silences thoughts. The kind that softens a coastline and coaxes moss into bloom. One quirky fact emerges during evening tally. The monks believe certain rains have color not visible, but felt. Today's, they agree, is silver-hued with undertones of humility. The conversation grows more philosophical as the rain continues. You gather in the refectory, sipping warm goat's milk mixed with something suspiciously herbal. The abbot reads aloud from the Book of Wetness, a compilation of favorite rain passages and observations. One excerpt reads, "To number raindrops is not to seek control, but to admit awe. It is to say, we notice you, sky. We are trying." Another reads simply, "Tuesday lots." Later, as darkness folds over the monastery, the rain picks up speed. Not a storm, just earnest. Steady. Determined. Like it has catching up to do. You and Tadig huddle beneath the overhang of the goat shelter, sketching rainfall patterns on old parchment scraps. The goats ignore you entirely. One sits on your foot. Tadig leans over. "Do you think the sky knows we're counting? You consider this. Maybe. Maybe it doesn't care." He nods. That's fair. By midnight, the rain is still falling. The bowls overflow. The tally sticks are worn. The scrolls bulge with notes and ink blots. And still they count, not because they think they'll ever finish, but because counting has become prayer. You return to your cell wet and bone-tired. The roof still leaks. The same spot. The same slow drip. You lie beneath it, eyes on the ceiling. 1, 2, 3. It's morning, and the leak in your roof has developed a rhythm, slow, consistent, and oddly comforting. You name the drip Gregory. Gregory is predictable. Gregory keeps time. You rise groggily, wrap yourself in your slightly moldy robe, and shuffle toward the main courtyard. The rain has eased into a lazy mist, the kind that doesn't fall so much as appear, as if the air is remembering how to be water. The monks are already outside silently at work. Today's project is something experimental. Brother Raindrop has declared it the intestinal spiral rain gauge. You sincerely hope it's not what it sounds like. Spoiler, it is. You find them in the tool shed coiling cleaned sheep intestines into tight spirals within wooden frames. The theory that rain will travel down the spiral, allowing for both measurement of flow rate and for reasons unclear contemplation of life's cyclical nature. Brother Cormac beams as he explains it. Water takes the spiral path as the soul does. You're too tired to question that. Historians still argue whether this was a serious attempt at hydrological engineering or an elaborate metaphor that got out of hand. Some suggest the spiral theory inspired later monastic diagrams of the cosmos. Others think the monks just had leftover sheep parts. You help install the spiral gauge on a flat stone ledge. The rain is light enough to test it. As droplets snake their way down the tube, Brother Noise tracks time intervals. 9 seconds per loop, he murmurs. Curious. Like a lazy thought circling a sleepy mind. Then he writes that down under a section titled Rain Sentiments Volume 4. Elsewhere in the monastery, Brother Yogan is comparing wetness levels between different types of cloth. He's hung samples of wool, flax, and moss from a line, and is weighing them periodically. His theory: different fabrics absorb the sacred in different ways. You nod sagely, pretending to understand, and jot in your notebook, wool, heavier than moss, holier. At lunch, cold barley stew and a plum half debate erupts over a critical question. Is drizzle just indecisive rain? The abbot silences the room with a raised eyebrow. Drizzle, he says, is the whisper of the divine. To ignore it is to ignore a soft-spoken saint. No one argues after that, though you do hear someone mutter, a very soggy saint. After lunch, the monks gather in the cloister for the great reconciliation of drops. This is a biannual ritual where all recorded rainfall from the past month is reviewed, discrepancies debated, and missing data filled in through educated guesswork dreams or highly subjective puddle readings. You sit with Tadg as he recounts a foggy Tuesday, where he definitely felt at least 5,000 drops, but failed to log them due to an incident involving a particularly aggressive goose. Everyone agrees to round it to 5,200 and move on. One fringe tidbit emerges during review, a scroll dated nearly 80 years back, records a day where one monk claimed to hear a single drop, then doubted himself, then wept for hours. That entry is marked with a teardrop-shaped ink blot. You spend the afternoon cleaning out the bowls again. Algae is forming in the deeper ones, which the monks see as either a flaw in the system or a gift from the sky. Cormac calls it rain's memory made green. You think it smells like pond breath. During Vespers, the chant is low and slower than usual. A steady cadence matching the tempo of mistfall. You can tell the monks are tired. Counting rain is more exhausting than anyone admits. And yet no one suggests stopping. Because in this monastery, every drop matters. Every almost drop too. You return to the spiral gauge and find Raindrop adjusting it with the precision of a man performing surgery. He's added a second spiral now, this one tighter. You ask why. To compare, he says simply, the wide and the narrow. How water chooses its path. Does it? Maybe, he says, but maybe it doesn't know either. You stare at the wet coils of sheep intestine glistening in the lantern light and decide that some things are better left unquestioned. Back in your cell, Gregory the Leak has brought friends. Now it's a trio like a percussive lullaby from above. You lie down, eyes half-lidded, counting the syncopated drips. One from the corner, one near your ear. One. Wait, where did that one land? Doesn't matter. You count anyway. The rain wakes you this time not with a whisper, but with a sharp metallic plink. Startled, you sit up. A brass bowl left beneath a roof drip overnight has become the monastery's accidental alarm clock. Each drop lands with surgical precision in its center, ringing out like a bell tolling for nobody in particular. You rise slowly, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and realize the monks are already outside. It's refectory debate day. They do this once every few weeks, an informal gathering around the communal table where they argue politely and persistently about issues no one else on earth would ever think to raise. Today's topic: should drizzle be counted as half a raindrop or a full one? You arrive just as Brother Fiontan is making his case for the half. Its impact is weaker. Less volume, less weight, less intention. Ruedri counters. A drop is a drop regardless of force. We cannot measure purpose. The abbot listens silently, sipping a mug of hot water and herbs. After a long pause, he offers his judgment: count it fully. Heaven does not make mistakes, just subtleties. You write that one down. Could be a proverb or a t-shirt. Historians still argue whether these monastic debates were actual theological exercises, or just a rainy day pastime for men with no access to dice or drama. After the drizzle debate wraps, the monks move on to measurement calibration. Turns out Brother Tadg believes his rain bowl has been collecting slightly more than average, and now everyone's suspicious. You spend the next hour running side-by-side bowl comparisons. The process is simple. Place identical bowls at equidistant points, measure accumulation. After precisely 28 minutes, subtract splash loss, then record subjective vibe. Ruedri insists on the vibe section. Yours reads, even humble, slightly insecure. Later, Brother Cormac introduces a new device, the pluvio flute. It's a hollow reed sealed at one end, designed to make different tones depending on how much rain collects inside. His hope is to hear the fullness before we see it. The first test is shrill, like a frog playing a piccolo inside a clay pot. Still, he beams. It's working. You can't argue with that. One quirky monastic tradition happens just before midday, the blessing of the bowls. All rain-catching vessels are gathered in the courtyard. The abbot walks slowly among them, flicking droplets from a sacred branch of bog myrtle and muttering Latin that may or may not be real. It's not entirely clear whether the purpose is spiritual, scientific, or just to wash pigeon feathers out of the bowls. The abbot says it consecrates the measurement. Ruedri says it's to keep the bowls humble. After lunch, boiled turnips and a shared apple slice, you're handed a logbook labeled Miserable Days Index. You flip through and find entries dating back decades, each evaluating the day's wetness, wind level, and general emotional timbre on a scale of cheerless to existential. One record simply reads, rained inward. You add your own misty pensive, smelled like fish regret. 6:10. As evening closes in, the monks gather in the scriptorium. Today's assignment: preserving rainfall poetry. Not just records, but impressions, imagery, reflections. You didn't know this existed. Brother Nauiz reads aloud, I saw the drop, and it saw me. Then we parted, as old friends do. You look around. No one laughs. This isn't parody. This is devotion. Even the frogs seem quieter tonight. Historians still argue whether this poetic catalogue of rain was a form of early Irish meteorological diary, or just monks slowly losing it over centuries of precipitation. You're given a quill and asked to add your own verse. You stare at the parchment. The ink smells like wet leather and regret. Eventually you write, it dripped. I counted. I forgot the number. It didn't matter. They nod approvingly. After complying the final prayer hour, you retreat to your damp cell. The trio of drips above your bed has become a quartet. They are not in harmony. You don't care. The blanket is heavy. The air smells like moss. Your limbs ache from nothing in particular. 1, 2. Miss 1. 3 again. Sleep sneaks in around the 5th drip. It begins with a sermon. Not a dramatic one, mind you. No fire or brimstone, just the abbot standing on an overturned rain barrel with his arms folded behind his back, and a truly enormous hood shadowing half his face. We are not meant to understand the sky. He begins only to wonder how it might someday understand us. The monks nod sagely. One of them coughs. Another scratches at something unidentifiable growing on his sandals. And just like that, the day begins. You're assigned to storm watch duty, which sounds more heroic than it is. Your tasks stand near the chapel roof with a leather-bound tally book and count the number of raindrops that hit a hanging copper plate. This is referred to as the plate of reckoning, and no one seems to be joking about it. Each drop makes a satisfying pluck. 1, 2, 37. Wait, was that one double? You start over. Raindrop joins you, soaked through but smiling. He has a basket of warm stones which he says are to weigh down the scrolls in high wind. You suspect they're also hand warmers disguised as theology. He tells you about a strange storm 20 winters ago. The rain came upward, he claims, from the rocks. A vapor inverted itself. Very theological. You smile politely. He could be lying. He could also be quoting scripture. At this point, you wouldn't know the difference. Meanwhile, Brother Tug is organizing the storm sermon incident commemoration, which involves rearranging the benches in the refectory, pinning scrolls to the rafters, and lighting a beeswax candle that smells faintly of burnt lettuce. You ask what happened during the actual incident. Oh, he says the abbot scolded a thundercloud for 2 hours after it soaked the book of Psalms. Did the cloud listen? It thundered twice, then left. Draw your own conclusions. Historians still argue whether this event was a genuine mystical exchange or just an old man yelling at the sky with excellent timing. After lunch, beetroot mash and some truly sour goat cheese, you help Brother Owen with a newly approved ritual weather forecasting via chicken bones and bird calls. The ritual is alarmingly specific. You must toss 3 chicken bones onto a vellum mat, listen for the first non-frog bird call, and declare a weather omen based on what part of the mat the bones point to. Today they land facing due north. Brother Ogan narrows his eyes. Fog. Slight melancholy. Perhaps a dream visitation. You nod solemnly. One quirky bit: this entire system was allegedly devised by Brother Seamus after he bumped his head on a rain barrel and saw a vision of a heron in a toga. The drawing of this appears in the margins of an old ledger annotated only with deeply unsettling, but probably useful. Back in the scriptorium, you help transcribe the rainfall metrics of the day. The numbers vary wildly. Some monks report 7,000 drops, others 9,500. One simply wrote, "It felt like being politely scolded by clouds." The abbot accepts all entries equally. Truth, he says, is rarely uniform. Rainfall aside, the real event today is the unveiling of the updated monastic rain classification table, an impressive feat involving 4 pages, 6 categories, and 3 contradictory footnotes. The categories now include Heaven's Whisper, Barely a Mist, Saint's Breath Light and Emotional, Cloak Soaker Moderate but Insistent, Penitence, Pour Loud Cold Regrets Everything, Judgment Rain includes hail or stinging drizzle, Mystery Moisture Source Unknown, probably cursed. You suggest a 7th Dream Rain for those times you wake up already wet and aren't sure whether it rained or you just dreamed about it. Raindrop adds it to the parchment with a satisfied flourish. Evening falls with an impressive drizzle, not enough to soak, but enough to make every surface glisten in the lantern light. The puddles reflect the cloister arches like upside-down portals. The monks chant beneath the overhang, voices lilting with the tempo of the rain. It's the storm psalm tonight. He bringeth rain upon the just and unjust, but mostly upon our manuscripts. You find your way back to your cell, tired but dry. The roof is holding for now, though Gregory the Leak offers a single drop in solidarity. You lie down warm in your robe, arms tucked beneath your head, listening to the world tick softly outside your window. Plock. Plock. Pause. Plock. You begin again. This morning the monks are unusually excited. There's been an overnight event, a hailstorm of considerable drama, and now they're rushing around the cloister clutching soaked scrolls and muttering things like, "It shattered the east bowl, and I told you that cloud looked smug." You're quickly roped into damage assessment. Your first task: inspect the rain-collecting vessels. One of the carved birch basins has cracked clean down the middle, a tiny ivory cross now resting sadly in a puddle at its center. Brother Tadg mourns it with an impromptu eulogy, faithful servant. May your measurements rise with the angels. Then he turns to you and says, we'll need a new one by midday. Preferably one that doesn't splinter under judgment. You fetch fresh wood from the supply shed, but not before slipping on a hail-slicked flagstone and nearly inventing a new monk-shaped crater. Your dignity survives. Barely. While Tadg carves the replacement bowl with near mystical concentration, you help Brother Cormac investigate the interior damage. One of the storage scrolls has swollen to the size of a pillow. You cradle it carefully. We may need to steam it flat, Cormac murmurs. Or press it between the Gospels and hope for forgiveness. Historians still argue whether these preservation tactics worked, or if monks simply created an illusion of archival diligence by stacking damp pages and hoping they'd dry into legibility. Up in the refectory, debate has already broken out what counts as a raindrop in hail form. Are hailstones simply angry drops, or a different category altogether? Ruaidri argues for classification under sky stones. Brother Owen suggests they be measured by impact bruising. Someone offers to recreate the damage on a goat for control purposes, which is quickly vetoed. The abbot eventually decrees a hailstone equals 5 drops unless it bounces twice. Then it's 7. You suspect he made that up, but no one questions it. Later, you're invited to participate in the post-storm reflection ritual. This involves writing a short entry describing the emotional effect of the hail event. Your contribution reads, loud, arrogant precipitation, felt personally targeted, slight headache. Meanwhile, Ruaidri has composed a haiku: skystones in my cup. Judgment in spherical form, penance begins now. The monks gather at what they call the Wall of Memory, a long, low shelf where retired rain-collecting vessels are honored. Some are chipped, others moss-streaked or completely cracked through. One is just a flattened gourd. Brother Noise whispers, each vessel gave its all. Then he sneezes loudly and ruins the mood. You help clean up after the storm, clearing broken slates and scooping chunks of ice from the cloister gutters. The monks toss these hailstones into a ceremonial basin at the center of the yard. One particularly large chunk is named Benedict the Smiter. That night, the hailstones are melted down into what the monks call judgment water. They'll use it to bless future rainfall scrolls. The logic is circular, mysterious, and oddly satisfying. You're told the rain tonight is different post-hail, humble. Indeed, the drops fall more slowly, more evenly, as if the sky feels bad about earlier and wants to make amends. One quirky entry from the old scrolls suggests that rain following hail is particularly receptive to forgiveness, and that monks should whisper kind words into puddles during this phase. You watch as Ruaidri leans over a small depression near the chapel and murmurs, "You're doing your best." Evening chants are quieter tonight. Less about weather, more about peace. The final psalm includes the line, "Let not the sky harden against us, but soften with purpose." Back in your cell, the roof drip has returned to its usual rhythm. Gregory survived the storm. You're dry, you're tired, and you're still trying to figure out if 5 hailstones equal a downpour. It doesn't matter. You close your eyes. One soft drop. Then another. Then sleep. By the time you open your eyes the next morning, the air already tastes of damp pages and old wool. There's something familiar in it. Not quite rain. Not yet. But close, like the moment before a thought forms. You shuffle toward the chapel, and before you even get there, the abbot corners you. "Have you ever forecasted rain using a leach jar?" he asks with alarming directness. You blink. No, perfect. You're in charge. You are not entirely sure whether this is a punishment promotion or simply how things work here. Moments later, you're handed a ceramic jar filled with muddy water and several irritable leeches. Brother Fiontan explains that when a storm approaches, the leeches allegedly grow restless, wriggling upward. When the weather is fair, they float lazily at the bottom like bored bishops. You're assigned to observe them for the next 2 hours and log their intentions. This is written on your task scroll in all caps. The leeches naturally do nothing. Historians still argue whether this ritual originated in Galenic medicine, Babylonian omen reading, or a monk simply trying to justify keeping pet leeches. Either way, it gives you plenty of time to think. By late morning it begins to drizzle. The monks emerge from their cells with bowls and books, and a disturbing eagerness. Brother Raindrop looks up at the clouds and sighs, "Ah, ambiguous rain. The best kind." Today's rain is indecisive, stopping, pausing awkwardly, like it's forgotten what it meant to say. This makes it difficult to count. You try, but the droplets are sneaky. One lands. Another almost does. One evaporates before reaching the cup. Tadg insists you still count that one. "It tried," he says. "That matters." You nod because of course it does. Your afternoon assignment: reviewing rainfall archives from the quiet century, a time when, according to Brother Owen, the sky kept secrets. These scrolls are fascinating. The entries are sparse, scattered, and sometimes clearly fabricated. One log simply states no rain today. We chanted anyway. Another includes a tiny illustration of a worried-looking cloud being interrogated by monks. You find one document containing a list of potential raindrop shapes illustrated with care. Round obvious. Teardrop classic. Squished plum rare. Suspiciously goat-like disputed. One quirky fringe theory buried deep in a scroll suggests that certain raindrops may contain sky letters, tiny divine messages written in liquid form. No one has ever successfully read one, of course, but several monks claim to have felt like something was spelled at them. After a stew break this time, flavored with something they call root delight, which tastes of boiled apology, you're asked to help in the hydrology hall. That's a generous name for a room with one shelf, 2 dripping jugs, and an ambitious chalkboard. Brother Nawis is developing a raindrop family tree. He explains with unnerving confidence that all forms of rain descend from a single primordial mist, and from there diverge based on wind speed, moral character, and altitude. You ask him what the moral character of a drop might be. Intent, he says. Some fall with grace, others with mischief. You help him pin a scroll to the wall showing this family tree. The soft mists, the bold drips, the confused splatters, and one box labeled simply, unknowns. Evening comes with a peculiar twist, a rainbow. You're standing near the well when you see it. Faint, fragile, like a smudge of color held aloft by wishful thinking. The monks treat it as an event. They gather outside in silence. One sings a single off-key note that might be awe or indigestion. Brother Ruedri writes sky's apology accepted. They even have a rainbow logbook. You are asked to describe today's. You write shy curve, quiet joy, smelled like moss and forgiveness. No one edits it. That night the rain returns softly like someone tucking you in. Back in your cell, the leeches have not moved. You decide they're prophets of inaction. Gregory drips in time with the wind. You drift off to the sound of pages turning and rain whispering its alphabet onto stone. You're barely awake when someone knocks softly on your doorframe. It's Brother Cormac, looking particularly sheepish and holding what appears to be a small barrel strapped with twine. "The abbot would like your assistance," he says. "With the forbidden barrel." You pause. What he gestures for you to follow, and soon you're winding through a tight corridor beneath the chapel, descending into a rarely visited storage vault that smells like pickled parchment and whatever a stone floor dreams about when it's feeling lonely. There, tucked behind a stack of salted fish crates and an inexplicably large collection of bells, sits a barrel sealed in wax, banded in iron, and labeled in shaky ink. 802 CE, do not open, unless entirely sure. You are not entirely sure. Brother Raindrop joins, eyes wide with excitement. We believe it contains untainted rainfall from the year of the Great Cloud, when the monks claim to have logged every single drop of a 30-day storm. Historians still argue whether that month-long downpour happened, or whether the monks misread their sundials and accidentally logged the same storm 4 times. Today the plan is simple. Open the barrel, take a sample, confirm its contents, and if deemed holy, consecrate it into the official record of exceptional precipitation. You pry open the wax seal. The smell is complex, like ancient tea seaweed and old sheep gossip. Raindrop dips in a wooden ladle reverently, then tastes a drop. He nods, serious as ever. Still potent. Possibly miraculous. Definitely moist. A small vial is drawn and sealed again. The rest of the barrel is re-wrapped, resealed, and gently sung to. You are asked to record the moment barrel opened. Water still water. Cloud lineage uncertain. All parties deeply moved. Back outside, the rain is misting again, classic reluctant drizzle. The monks call it siaradak, or talkative rain, because it seems to chatter as it falls. You're assigned to the dew discrepancy team. The monks have become embroiled in yet another debate, this time over whether dew should be included in rainfall logs. Brother Tadg insists dew is merely terrestrial self-reflection. Raindrop argues it's sky's whisper while the world sleeps. The abbot rules that dew counts only if it drips off something tall. Moss, for example, doesn't qualify. Chickens do. You spend the next hour measuring the accumulated dew on various surfaces. Stone grass, the chapel bell, and memorably, one very confused goat. You record the data in a new log, titled Ambiguous Moisture Volume I. After lunch, overcooked barley again. You're invited to a special lecture on puddle interpretation. Brother Noise believes puddles are more than leftover rain. They're reflections of spiritual condition. He explains. Still puddles. Internal peace. Rippled puddles, or doubts or goats nearby. Murky puddles. Emotional backlog. Puddles that disappear. Divine mystery. You note this down and glance at your own reflection in a small depression near the chapel wall. The water shows your face, then a gust of wind distorts it. Rippled, you whisper. Definitely goats. One quirky entry in the monastery's great compendium of rain notes reveals that in the 870s, a monk claimed to see his future in a puddle. When pressed, he admitted it was just his own reflection wearing a different hat. Evening draws in. The clouds clear just enough for a blood-orange sunset to bleed across the wet stone walls. The puddles shimmer with skyfire. Someone begins humming. Brother Raindrop approaches holding the original rain scroll from the Forbidden Barrels era. They say the rain that month fell like forgiveness, he says. Each drop lighter than regret. You stand together in silence, watching water gather and shift. Back in your cell, Gregory offers one single drip before falling silent. The leeches haven't moved. The goat sneezes somewhere nearby. You're warm. You're tired. And your dreams are filled with puddles that speak in rhymes. You wake slowly to the gentle percussion of rain on slate, an old rhythm now etched into your bones. Gregory, the leak above your bed, resumes his faithful tapping. You suspect he's jealous of all the newer, trendier leaks, but he keeps his tempo steady. Respect. Today the air smells sweet like wet hay and distant peat smoke. A soft rain, the kind the monks call Anail na Baflythias. The breath of the heavens. No thunder. No hail. No drama. Just sky and earth having a quiet conversation. Your assignment this morning: accompany Brother Ogun to a sacred spring at the base of the island, part of a long-running project known as the Well Moisture Reconciliation Effort. The monks are trying to determine how much of the island's rainfall ends up seeping into holy wells, and how much they believe simply vanishes into mystery. This involves hiking down a narrow path that switches back along mossy cliffs and slippery rock steps. The trail is known ominously as the Pilgrim's Slide. You don't ask why. Ogun, who's barefoot and seemingly immune to both cold and sanity, talks the whole way about how wells are like souls. Deep, dark, mysterious, occasionally full of frogs. When you finally reach the well, it's brimming with water that ripples gently, despite no visible wind. The monks believe this indicates an active blessing. You just think something unseen is living in it. Your job is to lower a carved ladle decorated with raindrop motifs, of course, and retrieve a sample. You do so carefully, trying not to splash, and pass the water to Ogun, who sniffs it like a connoisseur and declares, "Miracle adjacent." He pours it into a tiny sealed jug, notes the time weather, and whether or not he heard any divine murmurs he did not, then logs it into a wax tablet with a stylus made from some kind of bird bone. On the way back up, it starts raining harder. Ogun lifts his face to the sky and opens his arms. "We will never know where the first drop falls," he says. "But we can always honor the last one." Historians still argue whether these well rituals were acts of early hydrological mapping or simply devotional hydration. Either way, the records survive hundreds of tiny parchment slips marked with phrases like, "Well, calm sky, mild insight minor." After lunch, a surprisingly competent oatcake and something green they insist is edible. You're summoned for what the monks call fungal watch. This is not a metaphor, because some scrolls, especially those in the damp corner of the lower archive, have begun to bloom with a colorful little intruder, a reddish mossy fungus the monks refer to as scriba's blush. Brother Tadug shows you how to gently clean it using a brush made from fox whiskers and vinegar-soaked wool. He mutters while he works. Some say the fungus records its own history. I say it's just cheeky. He pauses before tossing a ruined scroll into the fire. This one claimed it rained frogs in 842. He shrugs. May as well let it go. You salvage part of a margin, a small inked drawing of a monk with a toad on his head. It goes into the wall of odd occurrences. Later in the afternoon, Brother Noais invites you to copy part of the Codex of Water Visions, a book that blends rainfall statistics with dreams the monks believe were influenced by weather. You read entries like rain at noon, dreamed of climbing a staircase made of dripping stones, felt watched, woke hungry, or soft rain after vespers, dreamed I was a puddle, peaceful, flat, understood everything. You copy your favorite one, thunderstorm, dreamed of a goat speaking Latin, possibly symbolic, possibly goat. One quirky discovery pressed between two pages, you find a 4-leaf clover. Noted beside it in tiny script, found during downpour. Gave it to a snail. Felt noble. Evening settles with a chill wind, and the rain shifts back into mist, thinner than breath, barely visible. The kind the monks call cloud skin. It softens every edge of the world, blurring the stones and lantern lights into something halfway between dream and waking. During Compline, they sing a hymn you haven't heard before, one saved for days of holy well readings. The final line echoes through the chapel archways. As the drop returns to the deep, so may we return to silence. You lie down that night, still damp from the climb, your muscles aching from fungal acrobatics, and your thoughts full of wells, moss, and raindrops falling in places no one sees. Gregory offers a single respectful drip. You don't even bother to count it. The monastery smells different today, less like wet stone, more like wet parchment. A subtle shift, but enough that the monks notice. Brother Ruedri calls it scripture weather. It's the kind of rain that makes ink run, and monks mutter in Latin under their breath. Breakfast is quiet. Everyone's eating barley mash while carefully shielding their bowls from the slow drip cascading down the refectory beams. The monks have gotten so good at dodging leaks that the whole meal feels like a sacred dance. An elbow here, a lean there, a napkin stuffed tactically into the collar. You're summoned after the meal for one of the more peculiar tasks of the month, the dung candle experiment. Brother Fiontan greets you in the courtyard with the cheerful solemnity of someone who absolutely believes in what he's about to do, despite all physical evidence to the contrary. We're trying to detect early drizzle, he says, using modified candles. He holds up a squat, grim-looking wax lump speckled with flecks of moss and, yes, unmistakably sheep droppings. The dung improves wicking, he explains. Also absorbs ambient moisture. If it sputters early, the drizzle is close. You light 3 of them. One goes out immediately. The other two sputter uncertainly. It's either working, says Fionton, or a goat sneezed on it. You log the results anyway. Candle A, immediate fizzle. Candle B, moderate flicker. Candle C, mysteriously vanished, possible goat. Historians still argue whether this experiment represents early hygrometry, or just the moment the monks got a little too cozy with barnyard supplies. Either way, it's still included in their annual manual of sacred instruments right next to the pluvio flute and the moss sponge. Back inside, the abbot is organizing scrolls for drop number reconciliation. Every quarter, the monks sit down to compare tallies and resolve conflicts between various rainfall logs. It's part bookkeeping, part spiritual examination. You sit at a long table lined with scrolls where Raindrop unrolls 3 side-by-side entries from the same storm. Brother Ogun 8206 drops. Brother Tadig 7950 drops. Brother Seamus since transferred 9300, and a note reading possibly imagined 1000. The abbot frowns, draws a line through Seamus's tally, and writes, subtract 1 penance unit. There is no clear definition for a penance unit. The monks refuse to elaborate. As drizzle thickens into a gentle shower, you accompany Brother Nauis to what he calls the sky's counting chamber, a quiet alcove near the northern wall, where echoes of falling rain are amplified by the dome above. You sit, eyes closed, listening to drops patter on a copper plate placed dead center on the floor. 1, 2, 4, 8. They come too fast. The sound multiplies. Now, whispers Nauis. You must count the gaps, not the drops. The absences are more revealing than the presence. You try. It feels like trying to measure silence in a room full of whispering sheep. Still, you write down one long pause. Felt like hesitation. Followed by quick burst. Confident rain. Later, you're assigned to clean the rain maps. These are tattered diagrams covered in blotches of ink and symbols representing previous downpours, intensity, direction, even flavor. You ask what chalky-tanged squall means, and Brother Cormac simply gestures toward a cloudy corner of the sky and says, you'll know it when you taste it. One quirky note in the margin of a rain map from 843 states rain arrived sideways. Then upwards. Monks unsure. Goat displeased. You add a small update to today's map. Drizzle persisted. Dung candle possibly working. Skepticism remains. In the evening, the rain softens again. The monks gather in the cloister, eyes raised to the sky. Brother Tadig stands on the stone ledge and poses the question of the day. How many drops fall per soul? They all pause. Brother Ogun offers as many as needed. Raindrop counters as many as we notice. The abbot raises a hand. We are not the ones to ask. They nod, content with the mystery. That night, back in your cell, you look up at Gregory's familiar drip. He's slowed down today. Thoughtful, perhaps. Philosophical. You stare at the beam above your head and whisper, how many drops fall per dream? You wait for an answer. 1, 2. You wake with a start to the rhythmic sound of rain pounding the stone steps outside. This isn't the usual gentle drizzle or shy mist. It's a full-on determined downpour, the kind that makes even seasoned monks scurry for cover and mutter prayers faster than usual. The abbot is already up, pacing in his cell, muttering about rain with purpose. You hurry to join him, slipping on your sodden cloak and feeling the cold bite of wet wool. Outside, the air is thick with moisture, turning the monastery into a glistening fortress of stone and moss. You find Brother Fionton inspecting the rain bowls, now overflowing, his fingers tracing water lines as if reading a secret script. Today's task: rainfall intensity documentation. You're handed a parchment and instructed to note not just quantity, but mood, whether the rain feels angry, remorseful, playful, or solemn. You hesitate, but write down firm, insistent, almost scolding. Brother Raindrop nods approvingly. Yes, like a parent who's just caught you sneaking a goat into the chapel. You spend the morning moving between the various rain gauges scattered across the monastery bowls, carved troughs, bronze cups, and even a moss-lined pit dubbed the Earth's Mouth. Each registers the storm differently, and monks argue over whose readings are most spiritually valid. One insists that the moss pit reflects the soul of the rain, not just the volume. You're skeptical, but too polite to say so. Meanwhile, Brother Noise plays his pluvio flute, producing eerie whistles that harmonize with the storm's roar. He claims that different notes correspond to different stages of the downpour. You imagine this is true, and that somewhere a medieval composer is taking notes. Historians still debate whether these sonic experiments influenced later rain measurement tools, or were simply delightful monk distractions. Lunch is delayed by a sudden lightning flash, and an unexpected power outage of the monastery's only lantern. The monks use the time to tell stories of legendary storms, tales of clouds that bled, and hailstones that shattered ancient stone crosses. One favorite tale tells of a monk who during a tempest counted every drop falling on his tunic, then fell asleep mid-count and dreamed of a flood of feathers. The story is always followed by a hearty laugh and the warning, "Do not try this at home." Afternoon brings a surprise visit from a wandering friar from a neighboring monastery. He carries an odd device, a slender glass tube filled with colored water intended to show atmospheric pressure. The monks crowd around, fascinated and baffled. The friar calls it a weather wand, but the monks joke it's more like a cloud whisperer. You're given a chance to hold it. The water sways as the rain pounds the stones outside. It's like holding the sky in your hands, you say. Brother Cormac nods solemnly, almost as if we might understand it one day. As twilight descends, the rain eases into a steady rhythm, the kind that invites quiet reflection. The monks gather in the chapel, their voices weaving with the storm's song. You sit quietly, letting the rain wash over your thoughts literally and figuratively. One drop lands on your manuscript, smudging a few words. You smile. Some things you realize can't be counted, but can still be treasured. This morning the rain slows to a gentle mist that clings to every leaf and stone, turning the monastery into a shimmering garden of droplets. The light is soft, the air cool and fresh, and the monks move quietly, savoring the calm after the storm. You join Brother Ruedri and Brother Noise in the garden to begin the latest experiment, measuring rain's embrace. The idea is simple yet poetic, to estimate how much rain lingers on leaves and stones before evaporating or dripping off. Armed with delicate brushes and tiny cloths, you and the monks begin gently collecting droplets from leaves, carefully blotting each onto small squares of vellum. Each blot is numbered and catalogued. You see, Ruedri explains not all drops fall straight to the earth. Some stay holding on to life. You nod thoughtfully and jot down a note, rain's lingering kiss. Historians still debate whether this was a scientific attempt to understand microclimates or just monks trying to appreciate the little things. After the morning's work, you attend a lecture on rainfall and memory delivered by the abbot himself. He speaks softly, voice weaving through the damp air. Rain is like memory, he says. Sometimes it falls clear and refreshing. Sometimes it's muddy and forgotten. We, like rain, leave marks on the world that fade or deepen. You catch yourself thinking about the countless logs and scrolls piled in the library, each one a droplet in a vast ocean of remembrance. A curious monk asks if rain can remember sins. The abbot smiles wryly and says, "Only if we remind it." Lunch is a subdued affair, the monks thoughtful and quiet. You share a bowl of barley stew, flavored with wild herbs, and the occasional reluctant drop of honey. In the afternoon, you help prepare the rain meditation circle, a ring of stones arranged to catch and reflect rain and sound. The monks gather here to contemplate the fall and flow of water, focusing on breath and heartbeat in sync with the droplets. You close your eyes and listen the soft plink of rain on stone, the whisper of wind, the distant call of seabirds. It feels like time itself is breathing. One monk hums a low chant that seems to mimic the rhythm of the falling rain, and soon the entire circle joins in. The melody rises and falls, a prayer woven into the mist. One quirky detail you learn: some monks believe that if you focus long enough during these meditations, You can feel a raindrop's journey from cloud to leaf to river inside your own soul. You open your eyes and see droplets sliding down the carved stones, their paths like tiny glimmering rivers. Evening comes with a soft rain that blurs the world outside your window. You listen as Gregory the Leek resumes his steady drip, now joined by the chorus of nightfall. You lie back, heart full, mind quiet, and drift off, counting not raindrops, but moments. The dawn arrives wrapped in a thick fog, the kind that turns familiar shapes into ghostly outlines and muffles every sound. You step outside, pulling your robe tighter around you, and find the monks already gathered near the eastern cliffs, where the mist rolls in from the sea like a living thing. Today's task is unlike any before: fog harvesting and counting. Brother Fiontan, clearly thrilled, shows you an array of sponges, cloths, and wooden frames designed to capture the tiny droplets suspended in the air. Fog is rain waiting to happen, he explains, and we're here to catch its secret. You set to work pressing dampened moss against wooden boards, watching as the water beads and slowly drips into shallow basins below. The process is slow, meditative, and strangely beautiful. As you labor, the monks discuss the elusive nature of fog. It doesn't fall like rain, yet it wets everything. Does it count? Is it mercy or mystery? One fringe theory suggests that fog is the breath of ancient spirits, a misty veil between worlds. You smile, imagining a particularly chatty ghost offering a weather report. Historians still debate whether fog gathering was practical early science or poetic superstition dressed in moss and wood. After hours of collecting, you return to the monastery, hands cool and damp, spirit lifted. Back inside, the monks compare their catches, tallying droplets per square inch of sponge, debating the best materials for capture. Brother Raindrop insists that the fog speaks in whispers, not drops. He adds a poem to the ledger: silent water floats, touching all without falling, secrets in the mist. Later, the sun breaks through the haze, turning droplets on leaves into tiny prisms that scatter light like scattered stars. You watch a bee dip into a dewdrop and marvel at the delicate balance between rain, fog, and life. That night, as rain returns softly to the island, you reflect on the day's quiet lessons. Some things can't be counted, but they can be treasured. Gregory keeps his steady beat overhead, a comforting metronome in the dark. You close your eyes and smile. The morning light filters weakly through cloud-heavy skies as you find yourself drawn to the monastery's small workshop, where Brother Cormac is putting the finishing touches on a new invention, the rainometer. It looks like a simple wooden box with an intricate network of tubes and levers designed to collect, measure, and even record rainfall with unprecedented precision. Or at least that's the idea. You see, Cormac explains proudly, this device channels rain into calibrated chambers. When full, a lever tips, marking a count. It's automated, almost divine engineering. You watch as he sets it outside, waiting for the next shower. Historians still argue whether such devices were genuine attempts at early meteorology or elaborate demonstrations of monastic ingenuity. The first test run is less promising. A sudden gust knocks the rainometer sideways, spilling half the water and breaking a lever. Cormac sighs but smiles. Progress is a wet and crooked path. While repairs are underway, you join the monks in compiling the annual Rainfall Chronicle, a massive scroll recording monthly rainfall totals, weather phenomena, and unusual events. The entries vary wildly, some meticulous, others poetic, a few downright cryptic. One reads, "April rains fell like sheep's sighs." Monks not amused. Another, "Storm of July tried to outsing the bells." Bells won. You're asked to contribute. You write, "August. Rain danced lightly, playing with shadows." Spirits lifted. As evening approaches, the repaired rainometer chimes for the first time, sending a small shower of water droplets into the air, like a celebratory toast. The monks applaud. You feel strangely proud. Later, in the quiet hours before sleep, you wander the cloister, watching raindrops chase each other down the carved stone gutters. You think about the monks' efforts, not just to count every drop, but to understand what each drop might mean. You think about how rain is both relentless and gentle, precise and chaotic, a challenge and a comfort. And you realize perhaps that some mysteries are worth chasing even if you never catch them all. Gregory's drip has returned to his steady rhythm above your head. You listen content. 1, 2, 3. Today the monks are gathered for a special ceremony known as the Festival of the Falling Water. It's a celebration of rain renewal and the mysteries held in every drop. You watch as the abbot leads a procession around the monastery, carrying a carved wooden bowl filled with freshly gathered rainwater. The monks chant softly, voices blending with the steady patter of rain on stone. The procession stops at the chapel steps, where the abbot raises the bowl high and lets the water spill slowly down the steps, a symbolic offering to the earth. You feel the cool mist on your face and think about how the monks' relationship with rain is not just scientific, but deeply spiritual. A dance between human curiosity and divine mystery. After the ceremony, you're invited to participate in a communal rain counting, where everyone contributes to a single tally, combining decades of experience and devotion. The numbers are less important than the act itself. The shared focus, the patient observation, the humble acknowledgement of forces beyond control. One monk remarks, "We count not to conquer, but to connect." You nod, feeling the truth of it. As night falls, the rain softens to a whisper, the perfect lullaby for a day spent in awe. You return to your cell, grateful for the rhythm of drops and the stories they carry. Gregory's drip is steady and sure. You close your eyes and drift into dreams of endless rain. The rain is lighter this morning, a fine mist that shimmers in the slanting sunrise, dusting the grass and stone with silvery dew. The monks, wrapped in woolen cloaks, move quietly through the cloister, gathering bowls and preparing for the next task, the festival of Saint Michel. You help carry a curious artifact, a tall wooden cross, adorned with tiny rain gauges and copper cups. The cross, battered by years of weather, is paraded around the monastery with solemn pride, its arms dripping steadily as the monks sing their ancient hymns. As you march, you can't help but notice that everyone's steps fall in time with the rhythm of the rain. Even the goats seem to sense it, trotting alongside as if part of the procession. At the central courtyard, the monks pause. Each pours a measured cup of rainwater into the roots of the oldest tree. On the grounds, a gnarled ash, they believe to be as old as the monastery itself. The abbot blesses the tree, intoning, "May each drop return 100-fold." He looks around and adds, "And may none of it drip through the library roof this year." Laughter ripples gently through the group. After the blessing, you're assigned to the Raindrop color study, an annual tradition where monks test different natural dyes in rain collection bowls to see if red rain or blue rain can be observed. Elderberry, nettle, and beetroot stains are added, producing faint tinges in the water. Brother Ruedri insists this is essential research, while Tadig jokes it's a heresy that tastes like salad. You dutifully record each shade, noting the monks' debates over whether color changes signify divine intervention or just over-enthusiastic cuisine. Historians still argue whether these colorful experiments were proto-scientific or simply another excuse for a feast after the fast. One quirky note from a previous festival legend has it that the tree once dripped blue rain for a day after a novice accidentally added woad dye to the well. The event is remembered as both a miracle and a cautionary tale. As evening comes, you join the monks for a final song beneath the dripping cross. Their voices blend with the gentle patter of rain, filling the night with peace. Back in your cell, you listen to Gregory's steady drip and find comfort in the familiar sound. 1, 2, 3. Sleep calls and you answer. The morning begins with the cries of gulls and the rustle of wet feathers outside your cell window. Today, you're apprenticed to Brother Owen, the monastery's resident stormbird whisperer. His self-appointed role is to observe the behavior of seabirds, especially gulls and puffins, for signs of oncoming weather. You trudge out to the cliffs, rain-slick and wind-carved, with a tattered ledger in hand. Owen is already perched on a rock, squinting at the sky. "The birds know before we do," he explains. pointing as a flock of gulls wheels low over the water. They'll molt fluff or fly inland when a storm's brewing. Each has a message if you know how to read it. You watch as he jots down observations. Gulls circling twice drizzle. Puffin preening fair skies. Crow on the chapel roof thunder in 3 hours give or take. You do your best to add your own. Goose staring at own reflection. Existential drizzle. Historians still debate whether bird-based weather prediction was serious science, an excuse to spend time outside, or a symptom of cabin fever. Some modern ornithologists admit there's a grain of truth. Birds are uncanny barometers. Back inside, Brother Tadag is working on a new rain gauge lined with feathers, convinced that storm bird energy will improve accuracy. You help him stuff gull feathers into the rim, then set it out in the garden. When the first drop falls, it bounces twice, then sticks, eliciting a delighted whoop from Tadag. After lunch, barley bread and a suspiciously crunchy green salad. The monks meet in the refectory for a session of feather forecasting. Each monk presents their best guess for the next day's weather, based on the birds they've seen and the feathers they've found. The predictions are earnest, if not always accurate. Brother Raindrop calls for a vote. More reliable, the rain bowl or the bird feather? The vote ends in a tie, so both are written into the day's weather log. One fringe tidbit from the monastery's records: in the year of the great storm, a puffin wandered into the chapel and stayed for 3 days, after which the rain finally stopped. The event is now commemorated with a tiny wooden puffin statue on the altar. As twilight deepens, you notice the wind shifting and the birds growing quiet. The sky bruises to indigo as clouds gather for another round. The monks ready their bowls and scrolls. Back in your cell, you listen to the wind and Gregory's loyal drip, the song of storm birds echoing faintly through stone. You count 1, 2, 3, and drift off, feathers and raindrops mingling in your dreams. You wake to a sound that's become almost comforting: rain thundering on the slate, punctuated by the occasional plonk of an overfilled bowl, tipping its contents onto the cobblestones. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and soaked wool, and the monks are already bustling about, brooms in hand, trying to channel the new streams of water away from their most precious scrolls. Today marks the culmination of weeks of effort, the long-awaited final count. Everyone gathers in the scriptorium. The air is tense but quietly joyful. Monks pass tally sticks, ink pots, and the ever-present soggy logbooks down the table. Brother Raindrop is at the head, gently unrolling the most recent scroll, careful not to tear the damp edges. The process begins. Every record, every bowl, every scrap of parchment and bark is checked and double-checked. Disagreements arise: a missed day, a smudged entry, a bowl misplaced by a novice during a surprise goat incursion. Does a goat in the bowl double the count? Tadag asks, half serious. The abbot responds without looking up. Only if the goat recites the Psalms. Laughter breaks the tension, but the work goes on. Then disaster: a thunderous crash from above. The roof, already battered and patched 100 times, gives way above the archive shelves. Rain floods in, soaking centuries of records in a matter of moments. You and the others spring into action, scooping bundles of parchment from the deluge, wringing water from ancient scrolls, fanning ink-stained pages. Amid the chaos, you spot one lone scroll, miraculously untouched, perched atop a stack of firewood. Brother Nawis seizes it, holding it aloft. We have a survivor. The monks gather round. This scroll, written in a spidery hand, contains a single line repeated down the page. We counted, and still the rain came. It feels in this moment like a benediction. Historians still debate whether any of the great rain-counting ledgers ever survived fully intact. Some claim all was lost in this legendary big leak. Others suggest copies were hidden away in secret safe from water and time. In the aftermath, the monks mop, patch, and dry what they can, salvaging fragments and piecing together the story from memory and scraps. By dusk, the worst has passed. The fire is lit, warming damp robes and spirits alike. Raindrop, tired but undeterred, stands and speaks. We did not number every drop, but we tried, and that is its own miracle. You nod, knowing the real tally is etched not in scrolls, but in shared effort, laughter, and the humble awe that fills these stone halls. That night, as Gregory taps above your head and the wind hums at the window, you let the final count fade into dreams. The storm is over. The rain lingers only as a soft trickle, a memory running down the gutters and pooling quietly in the grass. The monastery feels changed, washed clean, a little emptier and a little fuller at the same time. You find the monks gathered quietly in the chapel, each lost in their thoughts. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone and melted candle wax. Brother Raindrop stands before the altar holding the lone surviving scroll from last night's deluge. He reads aloud. We counted, and still the rain came. The words echo through the high arches, weighty and gentle. No one speaks for a long while. After the service, you wander the cloister with Tadg. He confesses, no one ever really knows how close we got, do they? There's no disappointment in his voice, just a soft wonder, an acceptance that some mysteries are too wide, too wild to ever fit neatly onto parchment. Historians still debate whether the monks ever came close to tallying the full measure of a single storm, let alone a year. Some believe the ledgers were always more aspiration than record. Others insist a few near-complete counts survive, tucked away in foreign libraries or disguised as prayers. But among the monks there is no frustration. Instead, there's pride in their efforts, a sense of peace in the unending quest. After lunch, the abbot calls everyone together and asks each monk to share a memory from the long weeks of counting. Stories emerge of the day the wind stole every bowl of the sideways rain incident of counting drips through the night by candlelight, and the laughter that spilled louder than any storm. Brother Nawis recalls how during one particularly long vigil, he stopped counting entirely and simply listened to the music of the drops on the roof. Did you lose the number? Asks a novice. No, he replies. I found something better. There's a murmur of agreement. In this moment, it feels as though the real purpose of all this counting was not to control the rain, but to be present for it, to witness it, cherish it, and let it soak into memory. As dusk falls, the monks gather for a final prayer. Their voices rise and fade with the rhythm of the world outside, blending with the soft drip-drip that remains. You find yourself at peace not because you finished, but because you joined in. That night, as you settle in your cell, Gregory delivers one last thoughtful drip. You close your eyes, heart quiet, spirit steady. Some things you realize aren't meant to be numbered at all. The world is quieter now. The rain has finally tapered off, leaving only a gentle hush over the monastery, the kind of stillness that seeps into stone wool and the space between heartbeats. The monks rise early, their routines unhurried, voices low as if reluctant to disturb the peace the storm has left behind. Breakfast is taken in silence, broken only by the occasional soft laugh or clink of a wooden spoon. Outside, everything sparkles, the grass beaded with dew, the old ash tree glistening, each puddle reflecting a cloudless blue sky. Even the goats move with reverence, picking their way carefully between rain-bright stones. Today, the monks do not count. The scrolls are rolled up, the tally sticks set aside, the rain bowls washed and stacked by the well. Instead, they walk the grounds in small groups, pausing to watch sunlight filter through the mist, or to marvel at how water gathers in the hollow of a leaf. You join Brother Raindrop on the north wall, leaning on the worn stones, both of you simply watching as a single drop slips from the eave, hesitates and falls. We chased every raindrop, he says, smiling softly. But they still outnumbered us. You nod. It's enough. One by one, the monks gather in the chapel for a closing prayer. Not for rain, nor for numbers, but for gratitude, for the sky's generosity, for the persistence of memory, for the comfort of small rituals and shared wonder. You stand with them, feeling the slow exhale of a finished season. The abbot's voice is calm and steady. May we greet the next storm with the same open hands. Evening brings a soft gold light painting the stone and fields. The only sound is a single distant drip from Gregory, faithful to the last. You lie in your cot, eyes heavy, body warm, mind afloat on the memory of rain. You drift, not counting anymore, but simply being. The night deepens, and the last echoes of rain fade into a gentle silence. The monastery settles as if the stones themselves are sighing in relief content after the storm's long symphony. You feel your breathing slow, matching the calm that spreads through every corridor and cell, seeping into old wood and cool stone. With the windows cracked, you can just hear the ocean's hush, a distant rhythm folding into the land. Somewhere a bell chimes softly, as if to remind you that even in stillness, time moves forward, quiet, unhurried, at peace. The monks have all retired, their robes hung to dry, their ink-stained fingers resting. No more counting, no more chasing the impossible. The only numbers left are the slow beats of your own heart and the countless memories left behind by every drop. You let your thoughts drift back to the quiet laughter around the breakfast table, the warmth of a shared story in the candlelit hall, the patient way everyone tried again and again to find meaning in the endless rain. You remember the old ash tree, the festival songs, the hush after the final storm, and the way each moment lingered like mist above the grass. Now the only task left is to let go of numbers and names and surrender to the softness of this night. You feel your body grow heavier, as if gravity itself is tucking you in, drawing you deeper into comfort and calm. Let the world grow distant. Let your breath slow. With every exhale you release one more drop of worry, and with every inhale you draw in the gentle peace that comes after rain. Sleep is here, soft, steady, and sheltering as a monastery roof.